Some stories find us when we least expect them. This one came to me through a friend in Ohio, a man who spent 31 years at the same factory, only to find himself standing at a garbage dump one cold November morning, wondering what his life had become. What he discovered there changed everything. Not just for him, but for a creature that had long since stopped believing in kindness. I share this story because I believe we all need reminding sometimes the broken find each other. And sometimes, that's enough. The crows scattered first. Nathan Cole stood at the edge of the Maplewood Municipal Dump, a garbage bag in his hand, watching the birds lift into the gray November sky. Something had spooked them. Something in the pile of rotting furniture and split trash bags 20 feet ahead. Movement. Low. Deliberate. He squinted. The morning light was flat, colorless. His breath hung in the air. Then he saw it. A dog, or what was left of one. Ribs pressed against skin like fingers pushing through wet paper. Patches of fur missing. One ear torn halfway down. It crouched between a rusted refrigerator and a stack of wooden pallets, watching him with eyes that held nothing. No hope. No fear. Just the dull recognition of another human who would probably throw something. Nathan took one step forward. The dog flinched so hard it stumbled backward into the garbage. That flinch. He knew that flinch. Before we continue, I want to say thank you for being here with us. Our records show that over half of you watching haven't yet subscribed. If this story speaks to you, we'd be grateful if you'd hit that button. It helps us keep sharing stories like this one. Now, let's go on. Nathan didn't move. The garbage bag hung from his hand. Forgotten. The dog pressed itself lower into the trash, spine a ridge of bone beneath patchy fur. The bad smell of the dump, rotting food. Wet cardboard. Something chemical filled his nose, but he barely noticed. He'd been coming here for 3 months, every morning, sometimes twice a day. Not because the garbage needed hauling. Curbside pickup ran Tuesdays, but curbside meant staying home. Staying home meant sitting at the kitchen table while Grace got ready for work, pretending to read the classifieds, circling nothing. 31 years at Maplewood Auto Parts. Started on the floor at 21. Worked his way up to shift supervisor. Men used to nod when he walked past. Ask his opinion, wait for his call. Now he woke at 5:30 out of habit and had nowhere to go. The dog watched him. It hadn't blinked. Nathan took another step, slow. The gravel crunched under his boot. The dog's body went rigid. A low sound came from its throat, not a growl. Not quite. More like air escaping. He stopped. The skin condition was worse up close. Raw patches where fur should be. Pink flesh showing through. The right rear leg bent at an angle that wasn't natural. Tucked under the body like it hurt to extend. How long had it been here? Days, weeks. He thought about the men at the diner on Main Street. The ones who'd ask where he'd been, what he was doing now, whether he'd heard about the jobs opening up in Columbus. He hadn't been to that diner in 2 months. He thought about Pastor Reynolds at First Methodist, the way he'd grip Nathan's shoulder and say things like the Lord has a plan. Nathan stopped going to church 6 weeks ago. He thought about the shelf he'd built in the garage last week, tore it down the next day, built it again, tore it down. The dog was still watching him, waiting for a rock, a kick. Whatever came next. Nathan turned and walked back to his truck. He sat behind the wheel for a long time, engine off, staring at the dump through the windshield. Then he drove home. At 11:47, he opened the refrigerator, pulled out the leftover ham from Sunday dinner, cut 2 slices, wrapped them in a paper towel. His keys were already in his hand. The dump looked different in the afternoon light. Nathan pulled his truck to the same spot, gravel popping under the tires. He killed the engine. The ham slices sat on the passenger seat, wrapped in their paper towel, already starting to smell in the warmth of the cab. He scanned the piles, the refrigerator, the pallets. The dog was still there. Same spot. Hadn't moved an inch. Nathan got out. The truck door groaned. The dog's head lifted. He walked slow, stopped about 15 feet away, found a piece of flat cardboard, an old cereal box, crushed and stained, and laid the ham on top. Then he stepped back, 5 feet, 10. The dog watched him. Nathan shoved his hands in his jacket pockets. The wind picked up, carrying the sour smell of decay. Minutes passed. The dog didn't move. He waited. The cold seeped through his boots. His nose started running. He wiped it with the back of his hand. The dog's eyes never left him. Finally, Nathan turned, walked back to the truck, got in. Didn't start the engine. Through the windshield, he could see the cardboard, the ham, the dog, still frozen behind the pallets. 10 minutes, 15, nothing. He turned the key, drove away. That night, Grace asked about the missing ham. Nathan said he'd eaten it for lunch. She nodded, went back to grading papers at the kitchen table. The next morning, 6:15, Nathan was back at the dump. The ham was gone. The cardboard had been pushed aside. The dog crouched in the same spot. Watching him arrive, Nathan had brought leftover pot roast this time. He set it on a fresh piece of cardboard, stepped back, waited. The dog didn't move while he was there. Day 3, he brought water in a plastic bowl, set it next to the food. Day 4, Grace saw him packing the Tupperware. She stood in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, watching. She didn't ask. He didn't explain. Day 5, the bowl was empty when he arrived. The food, gone. First real confirmation. Day 6. The dog was visible when Nathan pulled up. It didn't bolt immediately. It stayed behind the refrigerator, head low, watching. Progress. Day 7. Nathan set down the food chicken this time, shredded, mixed with rice. He walked back to his truck, sat on the tailgate instead of inside the cab. The cold metal bit through his jeans. He waited, 20 minutes. His coffee went cold in its thermos. The dog took 3 steps out from cover, stopped, stared at Nathan. Nathan didn't move, didn't breathe. The dog took 2 more steps, lowered its head to the food, ate fast, desperate, swallowing without chewing. Its eyes never left him. When the food was gone, the dog backed away. Slower this time. It paused at the edge of the pallets, looked back at him, then disappeared into the trash. Nathan sat on the tailgate until his legs went numb. That night, he marked his calendar, Day 7. The next morning, he woke at 5:30 dressed, made coffee, grabbed the leftover meatloaf from the fridge. But when he pulled into the dump at 6:47, the spot behind the refrigerator was empty. Nathan checked behind the refrigerator. Nothing. He walked the perimeter of the dump, past the pile of rotting mattresses, past the rusted car frame on the north side, past the mountain of black garbage bags. Some split open, spilling coffee grounds and eggshells onto the frozen dirt. Nothing. He cupped his hands around his mouth. Hey. His voice sounded thin in the cold air. Foolish. Hey, dog. The crows answered. Nothing else. Nathan walked the perimeter again, slower this time, checking every gap between piles, every shadow under discarded furniture. The cold worked through his jacket, through his flannel shirt, into his bones. 2 hours. His feet went numb. His nose ran constantly. Versu. The dog was gone. He drove home. Couldn't eat lunch. Stood at the kitchen window, staring at the backyard without seeing it. Grace found him there at 2:30 when she came home from her shift at the school. Nathan. He didn't turn around. What's wrong? His reflection in the window looked old. When had that happened? There's this dog, he said. Grace set her bag on the counter. He heard her keys hit the table, her footsteps coming closer. At the dump. Been feeding it for a week. He stopped, swallowed. It's gone. Grace stood beside him. She didn't touch him. Didn't speak, just waited. It's stupid, he said. It's just a stray. Did you check the roads? Nathan turned, looked at her. The roads, she said. Animals wander. Maybe it went looking for food somewhere else, or got scared by something. He grabbed his keys. Route 7 ran past the dump, a 2-lane blacktop that connected Maplewood to the highway. Nathan drove slow, windows down despite the cold, scanning both sides of the road, fields, dead corn stalks, a collapsed barn in the distance, nothing. He turned around at the crossroads, drove back. Even slower, half a mile from the dump, movement caught his eye. He hit the brakes. The truck skidded on the gravel shoulder. There. In the brush along the roadside, something brown and white. Nathan got out, left the engine running, walked toward the ditch. The dog was tangled in a mess of dead brush and chicken wire, old fencing that someone had dumped years ago. It must have tried to cross the road, got spooked by a car, pushed into the thicket to hide. Now it lay on its side. The bad leg caught in the wire, twisted at an ugly angle, too weak to struggle anymore. When it saw Nathan, its lips pulled back. A sound came from its throat, half growl, half whimper. Easy. Nathan crouched at the edge of the brush. The wire was rusted, tangled with dead vines and thorns. The dog's chest heaved with shallow breaths. Easy now. I ain't gonna hurt you. The dog's eyes tracked him, wild, exhausted. Nathan pulled off his jacket, wrapped it around his hands, started working at the wire, pulling it away from the brush strand by strand. The thorns bit through the fabric. He felt blood on his palms. Kept working. The dog didn't bite, didn't have the strength. The wire around the bad leg was the worst. Wrapped tight, cutting into the skin. Nathan worked it loose. Careful, gentle. The dog whined a high, thin sound that cut through the cold air. Almost there. Hold on. The last strand came free. Nathan reached for the dog. It tried to snap at him, a reflex. Nothing behind it. He got his hands under its body and lifted. The dog weighed nothing. Bones wrapped in skin. A bag of sticks. It went limp in his arms. Not trust, just surrender. The fight gone out of it. Nathan carried the dog to the truck, laid it on the passenger seat. Its eyes were half closed. Breath coming in quick pants. A smell rose from its fur infection. Filth. Something dying. He got behind the wheel. His hands were shaking. He gripped the steering wheel until they stopped. The road back to town stretched ahead. Empty. He didn't go to the dump, didn't go to the vet. Drove straight home. Grace was on the porch when he pulled in. She must have been watching for him. Her face changed when she saw the passenger seat. Nathan got out, came around to the other side, opened the door. The dog didn't move. Its eyes tracked Grace as she approached. Lord, Grace said softly. Found her in the brush. Caught in old fence wire. Grace looked at the dog, looked at Nathan. A long moment passed. The wind picked up, rattling the dead leaves in the gutter. Well, Grace said, bring her in. They laid the dog on old blankets in the corner of the kitchen. It shivered constantly, a fine tremor that ran through its whole body. Its eyes stayed open, watching them, waiting. Grace warmed some chicken broth on the stove. Nathan sat on the floor, 3 feet from the dog, not moving. "She won't eat with us here," Grace said. They retreated to the hallway, watched through the doorway. 20 minutes. The dog didn't move. 30 minutes. Then, slowly, painfully, it lifted its head, sniffed the air, dragged itself toward the bowl. It lapped at the broth. Just a little. 3 or 4 swallows. Then it collapsed back onto the blankets. Exhausted. Grace's hand found Nathan's in the dark hallway. "What are we going to do?" she asked. Nathan watched the dog's ribs rise and fall, the patches of raw skin, the leg bent at that wrong angle. "I don't know." That night, he slept on the couch, told Grace it was his back acting up. She didn't argue. At 2 a.m., a sound woke him. The dog was whimpering in its sleep, legs twitching, chasing something or running from something in its dreams. Nathan got up, walked to the kitchen, stood over the blankets. The dog's eyes snapped open. It flinched, that full-body jerk he'd seen at the dump. Then it saw Nathan, recognized him, and something in its body loosened, just slightly. Nathan sat down on the cold floor, didn't touch the dog, just sat there. "It's okay," he said quietly. "You're okay." The dog watched him for a long time. Then its eyes closed. Nathan stayed on the floor until his back ached and his legs cramped. When he finally stood, gray light was coming through the kitchen window. The dog had moved during the night. 3 feet closer to where Nathan had been sitting. Grace suggested the name on the 3rd day. She sat at the kitchen table, coffee in hand, watching the dog sleep in its corner. Nathan stood at the counter, slicing leftover roast beef into pieces small enough to swallow without chewing. "We need to call her something," Grace said. Nathan kept slicing. The knife hit the cutting board in steady rhythms. "Naming her makes it permanent. She's sleeping in our kitchen." "Nathan, I'd say we're past temporary." He set down the knife, looked at the dog, brown and white patches, ribs still visible, but less sharp than a week ago. The raw patches on her skin were scabbing over, starting to heal. Grace tilted her head. "That patch over her eye. The brown one?" Nathan looked. A copper-colored splotch. Irregular. Covering most of the right side of the dog's face. "Looks like a penny," Grace said. The dog's ear twitched. "Penny," Grace said again, testing the sound. The dog lifted her head, looked directly at Grace for the first time. Eye contact 2 seconds, maybe 3, before looking away. Nathan watched. His throat felt tight. That night, after Grace went to bed, he checked on the dog before turning off the lights. She was awake, watching him from her blankets. "Night, Penny." The tail moved, a half wag that stopped almost before it started. He stood there longer than he needed to. The days took on a rhythm after that. Day 11. Penny ate with Nathan in the room. She still watched him the entire time, each bite, each swallow, eyes tracking his movements. But she ate. Day 13. Grace started the medicated baths for the skin condition. She filled the tub with warm water, added the solution Dr. Marsh had dropped off. Penny stood rigid in the water, legs locked, shaking so hard the water rippled around her. Grace worked quick and gentle, hands moving in small circles, talking low the whole time. Nathan held the towel ready. When they lifted Penny out, the water ran brown with dirt and dead skin. Day 14. Nathan found himself in the garage after lunch, sorting through scrapwood. 2x4s from the deck he'd replaced 3 summers ago, plywood scraps, a piece of foam cushion from the old porch furniture. 2 hours later, he'd built a bed frame, low to the ground, sides high enough to block drafts. He covered the foam with an old flannel shirt that smelled like him. He carried it inside, set it in Penny's corner. She watched from across the room, pressed against the wall. "It's for you," he said. Felt foolish saying it. She didn't approach while he was there. The next morning, she was sleeping in it. Day 16. Grace reached out during dinner preparation, slow and deliberate, and touched Penny's head, just her fingertips, 2 seconds. Then Penny pulled away, retreating to the far side of her bed. Grace smiled anyway. "Progress?" she said. Day 18. Nathan came downstairs at midnight for water. The house was dark except for the nightlight in the hallway. He walked into the kitchen, filled a glass at the sink, turned around. Penny was sleeping at the foot of the couch, not in her bed in the kitchen, at the foot of the couch where Nathan slept, close enough to touch if he reached down. He didn't reach down, just stood there, looking at her in the dim light, listening to her breathe. Day 20. Penny followed Nathan from the kitchen to the living room. She stopped at the doorway, watched him settle into his chair with the newspaper he wasn't really reading. Then she lay down right there, in the threshold, blocking the door. She still flinched at sudden sounds. The phone ringing sent her scrambling for cover. A car backfiring on the street made her press flat against the floor, ears pinned back, body rigid, each time. She'd freeze and wait for the blow, the kick, whatever her memory told her was coming. But she didn't run anymore. She stayed in the room. She stayed near Nathan. Day 22. Grace insisted on the vet visit. "She's stronger now," Grace said over breakfast. "We need to know what we're dealing with." Nathan loaded Penny into the truck. She sat on the passenger seat, body tense, watching the world scroll past the window. Her breath fogged the glass in quick, nervous bursts. Dr. Helen Marsh's clinic sat in a small brick building on Oak Street, wedged between a barber shop and an empty storefront that used to be a bakery. The waiting room smelled like antiseptic and something else, dog treats, maybe, or the particular scent of nervous animals. A cat yowled from somewhere in the back. Dr. Marsh came out to meet them. 58 years old, gray hair pulled back tight, no wedding ring. She moved with the efficiency of someone who'd been doing this work for decades. On her desk, Nathan noticed a framed photo of a German shepherd. The frame was dusty. She examined Penny on the metal table. Penny trembled under the fluorescent lights, but she didn't snap, didn't try to bite. Nathan stood against the wall, arms crossed. Grace sat in the plastic chair by the door. "Malnutrition recovering well," Dr. Marsh said, her hands moving along Penny's sides. "The skin infection is responding to treatment. Age, I'd estimate around 3 years." Her hands moved to Penny's hind legs. Her expression shifted. "Hold her steady." Nathan stepped forward, put his hands on Penny's shoulders, felt the tremors running through her body like electric current. Dr. Marsh manipulated the legs, one at a time. Penny whined a thin, high sound. "We need x-rays." The films went up on the light box 10 minutes later, black and white shadows, shapes Nathan couldn't read. Dr. Marsh pointed with a pen. "Congenital deformity, both rear legs. See here, the femur didn't form correctly. And here, the knee joint." Nathan stared at the images. The bones looked wrong, crooked where they should be straight. "She was probably born this way," Dr. Marsh continued. "She's been compensating her whole life, shifting weight to the front legs, avoiding full extension in the back. But the malnutrition accelerated the deterioration. The joints are degrading." Grace's voice came from behind them. "That's why she moves like that." "Yes, and it's getting worse." Nathan's throat was dry. "What does that mean?" What can you do? Dr. Marsh turned from the light box. Her eyes were steady, clinical. Surgery, both legs, reconstructive work on the joints, possibly pins and plates. It's complex work. She paused. It's expensive. $4,000, maybe $5,000. And there's no guarantee. It could work perfectly. It could make no difference at all. There's a small chance it could make things worse. The number hung in the air. Nathan felt it settle on his chest like a physical weight. And without surgery, she'll manage, for a while, but the degeneration will continue. Eventually, she won't be able to walk at all. A year, maybe 2, depending on how carefully you manage her activity. Penny lay on the table, panting softly, watching Nathan's face. I need to think about it, he said. Of course. Take your time. Dr. Marsh paused. But not too much time. The longer we wait, the harder the surgery becomes. They drove home in silence. Penny curled on the seat between them, head on Grace's lap. That night, after Grace went to bed, Nathan sat at the kitchen table with their bank statements spread in front of him. The calculator's glow was the only light in the room. Severance gone. The last payment had cleared 6 weeks ago. Savings account $2,347.82. Checking $891.04. Grace's biweekly paycheck $1,847 after taxes. Mortgage took $1,200. Utilities, groceries, car insurance. The minimum payments on 2 credit cards by the time it all came out. There was nothing left. There hadn't been anything left for months. $4,000. It might as well have been $40,000. Penny lay in her bed, watching him. The copper patch over her eye caught the light from the stove hood. Grace appeared in the doorway, robe wrapped tight, arms crossed against the chill. Come to bed. In a minute. She looked at the papers on the table, the calculator, his face. We don't have to decide tonight. I already know the answer. Grace crossed the kitchen, sat in the chair across from him. Her hand reached out and closed the checkbook. Do you? He didn't answer. She held his gaze for a long moment. Then she stood, kissed the top of his head, and went back to bed. Nathan sat alone in the kitchen until 2 a.m. Penny watched him the whole time. The next day, he heard Grace on the phone in the bedroom. Her voice carried through the thin walls. She was trying to keep it low. But the old house didn't hold secrets well. I know it's a lot to ask. Linda? No, things have been tight since the plant closed. He won't say anything. You know how he is. Nathan walked out to the garage. He didn't want to hear the rest. Linda was Grace's cousin in Toledo. They'd helped her through her divorce 8 years ago, let her stay in their guest room for 3 months, helped her find an apartment. Nathan hadn't thought about that in years. He picked up a piece of scrap wood, set it down, picked up another. 2 days later, Frank arrived. The Lexus pulled into the driveway at 11 a.m., engine purring, chrome gleaming in the weak November sun. Frank Weber Grace's older brother, insurance agency owner from Columbus. He stepped out of the car in pressed khakis and a polo shirt with his company logo stitched on the chest. He walked into the house without knocking. Nathan was in the kitchen, cutting up chicken for Penny's lunch. Penny lay in her bed, head up, ears forward, watching the newcomer with wary eyes. Nathan. Frank nodded once. His gaze moved to the dog. This is it. The stray Grace told me about. Her name's Penny. Frank crouched down, studying the dog like he was appraising a used car with too many miles on it. Penny pressed herself back into the cushion, making herself smaller. Skin problems, leg issues. Frank straightened up. Grace mentioned something about surgery. Grace talks too much. She's worried about you. We both are. Nathan set down the knife, wiped his hands on a dish towel, took his time. There's nothing to worry about. Frank moved to the counter, leaning against it like he owned the place. His cologne was too strong, something expensive that didn't belong in this kitchen. Nathan, let's talk straight. You're looking at $5,000 for a dog you found in a garbage dump. While you're unemployed, while my sister is working double shifts to keep the lights on. I didn't ask for your input. No, Grace asked for it. Frank's voice stayed level, reasonable. That made it worse. I'm trying to help you see this clearly. You can't afford this. You can't afford anything right now, and spending money you don't have on a stray dog isn't going to change that. Nathan's jaw tightened. You done. I'm trying to keep you from making a mistake you can't undo. By coming into my house and telling me what I can't do. By telling you what everyone else is too polite to say. Frank stepped closer. This isn't about the dog. Nathan, this is about you needing something to fix because your own life fell apart and you don't know how to face that. The kitchen went quiet. The refrigerator hummed. Penny whimpered softly from her bed. Get out, Nathan said. I'm not attacking you. I'm trying to get out of my house. Just listen for one. Nathan stepped forward, close enough to see the pores on Frank's face, close enough to smell that expensive cologne. I said get out. Frank raised both hands, palms out, stepped back toward the door. Fine. But think about what I said. Really think about it. Because my sister deserves better than watching you drown while you pretend you're saving something. He walked out. The Lexus backed out of the driveway too fast. Tires chirping on the cold pavement. Nathan stood in the kitchen, breathing hard. His hands were shaking. He pressed them flat against the counter until they stopped. Grace appeared in the doorway. She'd been in the bedroom the whole time. Nathan, don't. He's worried. We're both worried. He called me broken. Said you deserved better. He didn't mean. He said I was drowning. Said you deserved better than watching it happen. Nathan's voice cracked on the last word. He's not wrong. Is he about any of it? I can't afford the surgery. I can't afford anything. I've been pretending for 3 months that something would change, that I'd figure it out, but nothing's changing. Your brother's right. Grace crossed the kitchen, stood directly in front of him. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but her voice was steady. What Frank said was wrong. The way he said it was wrong. But the rest of it is numbers. Frank sees numbers. That's all he knows how to see. She reached up, put her hands on either side of his face. I see you, Nathan. I've been seeing you for 26 years, and what I see hasn't changed. Nathan couldn't speak. We'll figure out the money. Linda's going to help. We'll pay her back over time, same as we always do. Grace's hands were warm against his jaw. But I need you to stop listening to voices that tell you you're not enough. Frank's voice. Your father's voice. Whoever else is living in your head. She pulled him close. He let her. Penny watched from her bed. Silent, still. That night, Grace fell asleep with her hand on Nathan's chest. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Frank's words circling like crows over a carcass. This isn't about the dog. Your own life fell apart. Grace deserves better. At 3 a.m., he slipped out of bed, walked to the kitchen, sat on the cold floor next to Penny's bed. She was awake, watching him, always watching. What am I supposed to do? He asked her quietly. Penny's tail moved, just once. No answer. But she shifted her body, just slightly, pressing herself closer to where he sat. Nathan stayed on the floor until dawn. In the morning, the county animal shelter's phone number was written on a piece of paper in the junk drawer. He'd looked it up 3 days ago, just in case he couldn't do this. He opened the drawer, stared at the paper. Penny watched him from across the room. Nathan put the paper back in the drawer. Not today. He couldn't make that call today. He needed air, needed to move, needed to be anywhere but this kitchen with Penny's eyes following his every move. He grabbed his jacket and drove to Miller's Hardware. The store sat on Main Street, 3 blocks from the diner he'd been avoiding for months. Red brick front, faded green awning, same as it had been for 40 years. Nathan had bought every tool in his garage from this place. Mr. Miller Sr. sold him his first power drill back in 1993, showed him how to change the bits, told him to take care of it and it would last a lifetime. The bell above the door jingled when he walked in. He didn't need much. Just screws for a loose cabinet hinge. Something small, something that made sense, something he could fix. The aisle was empty. Nathan found the screws number 8, inch and a half. Phillips head, $2.37. He picked up the small plastic bag and walked to the register. The kid working the counter was maybe 19. Acne scars on his cheeks. Name tag said Tyler. Nathan handed over his debit card. Tyler swiped it, waited. His forehead creased. "It's not going through, sir." Nathan's stomach dropped. "Try it again." Another swipe. Tyler stared at the screen, shook his head. "Declined." He said it loud, louder than necessary. A woman in line behind Nathan shifted her weight, her cartwheels squeaking on the linoleum. "I have another card." Nathan dug through his wallet, found the emergency visa, the one with the $500 limit they never touched, the one Grace kept for real emergencies. He handed it over. Tyler swiped it. Waited. "This one's not working either, sir." The line had grown. 3 people now. Nathan could feel their eyes on his back, could hear the rustle of their coats, the shuffle of their feet. There's been some kind of mistake." "Sir, do you have cash?" Nathan opened his wallet. A $5 bill, 3 ones. The screws were $2.37 plus tax, $2.54 total. He had the cash. He had enough. But his hands were shaking so badly he couldn't grip the bills. Everyone could see. The woman behind him. The old man with the paint cans. The teenage girl buying picture hooks. Everyone could see. "I got it. Nathan." The voice came from behind him. Familiar. Nathan turned. Tom Riley stood there holding a can of wood stain and a pack of sandpaper. Tom Riley, who'd worked under Nathan at the plant for 15 years, who used to ask Nathan's advice on everything from carburetor repairs to whether he should propose to his girlfriend. Tom stepped forward, pulled out his wallet, handed Tyler a $10 bill. "Keep the change." Nathan couldn't move. The bag of screws sat on the counter between them. "Don't worry about it." Tom's voice was gentle, kind. That made it so much worse. "You'd do the same for me." Nathan took the bag. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. "Good seeing you. Nathan, take care of yourself." Tom walked past him to another register. Nathan left the store. The bell jingled behind him. The sound felt like laughter. He sat in his truck in the parking lot, hands on the steering wheel, knuckles white, $2.54. 15 years he'd supervised Tom Riley. 15 years of answering his questions, solving his problems, signing off on his overtime. Now he couldn't buy screws without charity. He sat there for 20 minutes. Couldn't turn the key, couldn't drive away, couldn't do anything but stare at the hardware store's faded awning and feel the walls closing in. When he finally drove home, he didn't go inside. He pulled into the garage, killed the engine, sat in the dark. The garage was cold, unfinished. Half a cord of firewood stacked against the back wall from 2 winters ago. His tools hung on the pegboard, organized by size, the way his father had taught him. The workbench he'd built in 1998 back when Marcus was 10 and wanted to help sand the edges. The half-finished ramp for Penny leaning against the sawhorses, waiting for screws he still couldn't afford. Nathan got out of the truck, sat down on the concrete floor, back against the wall, knees pulled up to his chest. The cold seeped through his jeans immediately. He didn't care. Frank's voice in his head. Your own life fell apart. The kid at the register declined. Tom Riley's kind eyes. You do the same for me. 52 years old, 31 years at the same job. Gone. All of it. Gone. And what was left Grace, working double shifts to cover a mortgage he used to pay without thinking. Penny, in the kitchen, waiting for surgery they couldn't afford. And Nathan, sitting on a concrete floor in a dark garage, unable to buy $2.54 worth of screws. The thoughts came then. Dark. Quiet. Persistent. What if you just left? Not that. He wasn't thinking about that. Just. Disappearing. Getting in the truck. Driving somewhere. Anywhere. Becoming someone else's problem. Or no one's problem at all. Grace would be fine. Better. Probably. She could sell the house. Move somewhere smaller. Stop working double shifts. Stop carrying him. You're a weight. A burden. Everything you touch turns to nothing. He sat there until his legs went numb, until the cold worked through his jeans and into his bones, until the gray afternoon light faded to black. The door to the house opened. Light from the kitchen spilled across the garage floor. Grace stood in the doorway, silhouette against the warmth. She didn't ask what he was doing, didn't ask why he'd been sitting in the dark for 3 hours. Just walked across the concrete and sat down next to him, her back against the same wall. They sat in silence for a long time. The cold bit through her work scrubs. She didn't complain. Tom Riley's wife called me, Grace said finally. Told me what happened at the hardware store. Nathan closed his eyes. You think I care about that? About $2? You should. Tell me what I should care about. Nathan, tell me what you think this looks like from where I'm standing. He shook his head. Because from where I'm standing, I see a man who got up every morning for 31 years and went to a job that wore him down piece by piece, who never complained, who never quit, who came home tired and still helped with dinner, still made it to every one of Marcus's games, still held this family together when things got hard. Her voice was steady, no tears, just truth. I see a man who got knocked down 3 months ago, who's been getting back up every day anyway, even when there's nowhere to go, who drove to a dump every morning because he couldn't stand feeling useless. Nathan's jaw tightened. I see a man who found a dying animal in the garbage and couldn't walk away, who fed her every day for a week without telling anyone, who pulled her out of a ditch and carried her home, who sits with her at night when she has bad dreams. Grace turned to face him in the dark. Frank sees numbers on a spreadsheet. He sees problems to solve and money to count. That's all he knows how to see. Her hand found his in the darkness. Her fingers were cold. But I see you. Nathan, I've seen you for 26 years, and what I see hasn't changed. I don't know who that man is anymore. The words came out broken, barely a whisper. Grace squeezed his hand. Then let me know for both of us. Until you remember. Nathan's throat closed. His eyes burned. He couldn't speak. They sat there, hand in hand, until the cold became unbearable. Then Grace stood, pulled him up, led him inside. Penny was awake in her bed, watching them. Her tail moved once when she saw Nathan. Grace made tea. They sat at the kitchen table, not talking, just being in the same room. Penny lay in her corner, eyes tracking Nathan's movements the way they always did. At midnight, Grace went to bed. Nathan stayed at the table. At 2 a.m., he moved to the living room, lay on the couch, couldn't sleep. At 3 a.m., Penny started whimpering. The nightmares again. Nathan got up, walked to the kitchen, sat on the floor beside her bed. She woke. Saw him. Settled? I almost gave up tonight, he said quietly. On everything. Penny's ears twitched. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if any of this makes sense. I don't know if I can be what you need, what anyone needs. She watched him, patient, steady. But I'm still here, and you're still here, so I guess that counts for something. He reached out, slowly, gave her time to pull away. She didn't pull away. His hand touched the top of her head. The fur was softer now, growing back where the skin condition had healed. She flinched just slightly, then leaned into his palm. First time she'd ever leaned in. Nathan kept his hand there until his arm went numb, when he finally pulled away. Penny's eyes were closed. He stayed on the floor until dawn. In the morning, the paper with the shelter's phone number was still in the drawer. He looked at it while Grace made coffee. Penny limped into the kitchen, stood in the doorway, watching him. Her tail wagged. Once, Nathan closed the drawer, but he didn't throw the paper away. The shelter was 40 minutes east on Route 34. Nathan loaded Penny into the truck at 9 a.m., told Grace he was taking her to a follow-up appointment at the vet. Grace nodded, kissed his cheek, left for work. He didn't go to the vet. The county animal shelter sat in a concrete building behind the old fairgrounds. Gray walls, chain link runs along the side. The parking lot was half empty. Cracked asphalt with weeds pushing through. Nathan pulled in, killed the engine. The smell hit him before he even opened the door. Bleach, animal waste, something underneath both that he didn't want to think about. Penny sat on the passenger seat, watching him. Her tail moved once, trusting. This is the right thing. Frank's voice, or maybe his own. Hard to tell anymore. You can't afford her, can't afford the surgery, can't afford to keep pretending you can fix anything. He stared at the building. A woman came out the front door, walking slow, arms empty. She'd had a leash when she went in. Didn't have one now. The woman stopped at her car, stood there. Her shoulders started shaking. Nathan looked away. Someone else will adopt her. Someone with money. Someone who can actually help. Penny shifted on the seat. Her bad leg scraped against the vinyl. She whimpered soft, questioning. Nathan's hand was on the door handle. The woman by the car was still crying. She got in, sat there for a long time, then started the engine and pulled away without looking back. Nathan turned to Penny. She was watching him. Those dark eyes, the copper patch over her eye, the way her body had learned to lean toward him instead of away. She didn't know what this place was, didn't know what he was about to do. All she knew was that he'd come back every day for a week, that he'd pulled her out of the ditch, that he'd sat with her through the nightmares. She trusted him. And he was going to walk her through those doors and hand her to a stranger and drive away and never look back. His hand tightened on the door handle. Do it! Just do it! Get it over with! Penny's tail wagged again, hesitant, hopeful. Nathan's eyes burned. You can't even buy screws. You can't provide for your wife. You can't do anything except sit in garages feeling sorry for yourself. At least this way she has a chance. He pulled the handle. The door clicked open. Cold air rushed in. Penny's ears went back. Nathan put one foot on the pavement. Penny whined. High and thin. The same sound she'd made in the ditch. Tangled in wire. Too weak to fight. Nathan froze. One foot on the ground. One hand on the door. Penny watching from the passenger seat. He couldn't move. Get out. Walk around. Open her door. Carry her inside. Sign the papers. Leave. His body wouldn't obey. The shelter door opened. A man in scrubs came out. Carrying a trash bag toward the dumpster, he glanced at Nathan's truck. Nodded. Kept walking. Nathan sat there. Half in, half out. Penny crawled across the seat. Slowly. Painfully. Her bad legs dragging. She pressed her nose against his arm. The touch broke something. Nathan pulled his foot back inside. Slammed the door. Started the engine. He drove out of the parking lot too fast. Didn't look in the rearview mirror, didn't look at Penny. His hands shook the whole way home. Grace was still at work when he pulled into the driveway. He sat in the truck for a long time. Penny stayed on the passenger seat, watching him, not understanding what had almost happened. When Grace came home at 4:30, Nathan was in the kitchen. Penny was in her bed. Everything looked normal, but Grace knew. She always knew. How was the vet? Nathan's back was to her. He was staring out the window at nothing. I didn't go to the vet. Silence. He heard her set down her bag. Her keys hit the counter. Where did you go? His throat closed. He couldn't turn around. Couldn't look at her. The shelter. County Animal Shelter off Route 34. Grace didn't speak. I sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes, had my hand on the door. I was going to... His voice cracked. I was going to give her up. Walk her in there and sign the papers and drive away. The kitchen was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. But you didn't. No. Why not? Nathan finally turned. Grace stood by the counter, still in her work scrubs, face unreadable. I don't know. I couldn't. She looked at me and I couldn't do it. Grace crossed the kitchen, stood in front of him, close enough to touch. Nathan, look at me. He looked. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. You drove 40 minutes to give up. You sat in that parking lot ready to walk away from something you love, and you couldn't do it. That's not strength. That's weakness. I should have what abandoned her proved Frank right about everything. Frank is right. About all of it. I can't afford her. I can't afford anything. I'm dragging you down, and now I'm dragging a crippled dog into it too. Grace grabbed his face with both hands. Forced him to look at her. You listen to me. What you did today, driving to that shelter, that wasn't weakness. That was you at your lowest. Trying to do what you thought was right for everyone else. And even then, even when you had nothing left, you couldn't betray something that trusted you. Her fingers were cold against his cheeks. That's not weakness. Nathan. That's the only thing that matters. He couldn't speak. His eyes burned. Linda's wiring the money tomorrow. We'll pay her back over time. The way we always do. But I need you to stop trying to give up. On Penny. On yourself. On us. Penny watched them from her bed. Her tail moved. Once. Twice. That night, Nathan couldn't sleep. He lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, listening to Grace's breathing from the bedroom. At 3 a.m., he got up, went to the kitchen. Penny was awake, watching him, always watching. He sat on the floor beside her bed. The cold tile bit through his pajamas. I almost left you today. Penny's ears twitched. "I had the door open. I was going to walk you in there and hand you over and drive away and never come back." She watched him, patient, steady. "I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if I can be what you need, what anyone needs." He reached out, touched her head. She didn't flinch, didn't pull away. She leaned in. "But I didn't leave you," Nathan whispered. "I couldn't." Penny's eyes closed. Her body relaxed against his hand. Nathan stayed on the floor until dawn. When the gray light started coming through the windows, he finally stood. His decision was made. Nathan called Dr. Marsh's clinic at 8 a.m. "Schedule the surgery." A pause on the line. "You're sure?" "Mr. Cole, I am sure." He hung up. His hands were steady for the first time in weeks. Grace stood in the kitchen doorway, coffee cup frozen halfway to her lips. "Linda's money came through this morning," she said. "I was going to tell you at breakfast." Nathan nodded, didn't explain how he'd made the decision before knowing about the money. Didn't need to. That evening, Nathan sat in the living room. The television was off. The house was quiet. Grace had gone to bed early, exhausted from back-to-back shifts. He should have been sleeping too. Surgery was scheduled for next week. There were things to prepare, but he couldn't quiet his mind. He kept thinking about the shelter parking lot, the woman crying in her car, the way he'd had one foot on the pavement, ready to walk away from everything. He'd been so close to giving up. What stopped him? Penny's whine. Her nose against his arm. The trust in her eyes. But that wasn't quite right either. Penny trusted him because he'd earned it. Day after day. Showing up, being there, not giving up. Even when every logical part of his brain screamed to walk away. A sound from the kitchen, Nathan stood, walked to the doorway. Penny was standing in the middle of the kitchen floor. Not lying in her bed, standing. She'd never come to him before. He'd always gone to her. Her legs shook. The bad ones worse than the others. But she was standing. She took a step, wobbled, steadied herself, took another. "Penny, don't you'll hurt yourself." But she kept coming. 3 steps. 4. Her legs trembled. Her whole body shook with the effort. The bad leg buckled. She stumbled, caught herself, kept going. She crossed the kitchen, slow, painful, determined. Nathan dropped to his knees on the cold tile. Penny kept coming. 5 steps. 6. Her breath came in quick pants. Nails scraping against the linoleum. She reached him. Her legs gave out. She collapsed against his chest. Nathan caught her, held her. She pressed her head into his shoulder, not from exhaustion, not from weakness, from choice. She had walked across the kitchen on legs that barely worked. Through pain, he couldn't imagine to reach him, because she wanted to. Because she trusted him. Because he had shown up, every single day, and she knew he would keep showing up. Nathan held her tight, his face buried in her fur. She smelled like medicated shampoo and something underneath that was just her. He thought about what Grace had said. You drove 40 minutes to give up, and you couldn't. He thought about what Frank had said. This isn't about the dog. Maybe Frank was right. Maybe it wasn't about the dog. Maybe it was about proving to himself, to the world, to whatever part of him had given up that he could still do something that mattered, that he could still show up, that he was still worth something. Not because of what he provided, not because of the paycheck or the job title or the respect of men who used to nod when he walked past. Because of what he chose to do. Every day, even when it was hard, even when it made no sense. Penny shifted in his arms, looked up at him. Her tail wagged against his leg. "Okay," Nathan whispered. "Okay." The phone rang at 9 p.m. Nathan was still on the kitchen floor, Penny asleep in his lap. He reached for his cell without disturbing her. Marcus, his son's name on the screen. "Hey, Dad?" "Marcus?" Nathan's voice was rough. "Everything okay?" "Yeah. Mom called me earlier. Told me about the dog, about the surgery, about everything." Nathan closed his eyes. "She shouldn't have worried you with all that." "She didn't worry me." Marcus paused. "She told me what you've been doing. The dump, finding Penny, taking care of her, going to the shelter and not being able to leave her there." Silence on the line. "Dad, you remember what you used to tell me when I was 12 and wanted to quit Little League because I couldn't hit a curveball?" Nathan searched his memory. Came up empty. "No. You said it ain't about being the best. It's about showing up. Every game. Every practice. You show up, and that's what counts." The words hit Nathan somewhere deep. "You showed up for me, Dad. Every game I ever played. Every time I needed you." Marcus's voice was steady. "And you're showing up for that dog? Same as you always have? Same as you always will?" Nathan couldn't speak. His throat had closed completely. "I gotta go. Early shift tomorrow. But Dad, yeah, I'll be praying for Penny. And for you." The line went dead. Nathan sat in the dark kitchen, Penny warm in his lap, his son's words echoing in his head. It's about showing up. He looked down at Penny. She was watching him. Those dark eyes, that copper patch. Tomorrow he would call Dr. Marsh and confirm the surgery date. Tomorrow he would start building the ramp so Penny could get in and out of the house during recovery. Tomorrow he would figure out the next step, and the step after that. But tonight, in this kitchen, on this cold floor, Nathan knew one thing for certain. He was done giving up. Surgery day came on a Tuesday. Nathan drove Penny to the clinic at 6:30 a.m. Grace sat in the passenger seat. Penny lay across her lap, calm, watching the road through the window. The waiting room smelled like antiseptic. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. A radio played softly from somewhere in the back old country, the kind Nathan's father used to listen to. Before they took her to the operating room, Nathan knelt on the linoleum floor. Penny looked at him. Those dark eyes, the copper patch. He put his hand on her head. Didn't say anything. Couldn't. She leaned into his palm, held his gaze. Then the technician lifted her onto the gurney and wheeled her through the double doors. 4 hours in the waiting room. Nathan sat in the plastic chair. Grace beside him, her hand on his knee. The clock on the wall ticked. 10:15, 11:30, 12:47. At 1:23, the double doors swung open. Dr. Marsh walked out, pulled down her surgical mask. Her face was tired but calm. "Surgery went well. Both legs corrected. She's in recovery now." Nathan's breath left him in a rush. "The next several weeks will tell us how much mobility she'll have. But she came through strong. 6 weeks of recovery." Nathan built the ramp, changed her bandages, carried her outside when she needed to go, slept on the floor beside her bed when the pain kept her whimpering through the night. Physical therapy twice a week. Dr. Marsh showed them the exercises, gentle movements, slow stretches. Penny tolerated it, barely. Day by day, she grew stronger. Week 8, late January. First real snow of the winter. Nathan opened the back door. Penny stood at the threshold, sniffed the cold air, looked at the white covering the yard. She stepped outside, slow, careful, steady. Her gait wasn't perfect, would never be perfect, but she walked. She walked through the snow, leaving small tracks behind her. Stopped, sniffed a frozen leaf, looked back at Nathan, and waited for him. He stepped outside. They walked together, slow, nowhere particular to go. 3 months later, spring. Nathan worked part-time at Miller's Hardware. Tom Riley had put in a word with the manager, 20 hours a week, minimum wage. But it was something. Penny came with him most days, slept on a blanket behind the counter. The customers stopped to pet her. Ellie Dawson came in one afternoon, 78 years old, lived 3 houses down. She watched Penny greet a little boy who'd wandered in with his mother. "You can tell a lot about a man," Ellie said quietly, "by what he won't give up on." She patted Penny's head, walked out without buying anything. That evening, Nathan's house, Penny asleep in her bed, Grace reading on the couch, Nathan beside her, not reading, just sitting. Nothing special, just an ordinary evening. Penny's tail moved once in her sleep. Nathan watched her breathe. Some stories leave us quieter than when we started. This one may have stirred something familiar, a weight you've carried, a time when you weren't sure you had anything left to offer. Many of us know what it feels like to stand at the edge of giving up. To wonder if showing up still matters when no one seems to notice. To love something broken and not know if we have enough left to help it heal. Perhaps you've been the one who kept going when the world looked away. Perhaps you've sat alone in a dark room, wondering what you're still good for. Perhaps you found yourself reaching towards something small and wounded. Not because you had the answers, but because you couldn't walk away. We don't always understand why certain things find us when they do, and perhaps we don't need to. It's all right if this story touched something that doesn't have a name. It's okay to let it rest there. Unfinished. The way so many things in life remain. Not everything needs to be fixed or explained. Sometimes showing up is enough. Sometimes staying is the whole point. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening all the way through.